Ploughman feeds us all. Wise words there from Aelfric's colloquy, written about 1000 AD. And hi, my name is Jen, and today I'd like to talk about Anglo Saxon bread. Now, grains and the bread made from them was one of the main sources of calorie intake for the Anglo Saxons. Bread would be made out of a mixture of grains, so things like wheat, barley, oats, rye, even beans could be ground down, made into flour and turned into bread. In times of famine, there are records of things like acorns being used to bulk out the flour. Now today I would like to try and make a type of bread similar to what the Anglo-Saxons may have had. And for this I need to use my trusty quernstone here. So first of all, let's take a bit of a closer look at it. So this is my quernstone. It's basically two heavy rocks or two heavy stones, and the grain goes into this hole in the top in the middle, and gravity helps it, and inside the quernstone there's these grains, these lines here, these grooves carved into it, and these are what assist the grain to be crushed as well. They help to push the grain to the outside. So let's give it a go. Let's start milling some grain. Now today I want to make some bread that would be available to the middling sort of Anglo-Saxons. So not the richest of the rich, but also not the poorest of the poor. So those at the top of the social scale would be able to afford something that would be closest to the bread available in the supermarkets, the fine wheat bread, the finely sifted flour, the softer bread. And those in the poorest classes would have pretty much anything they could grind up. Also, full disclosure, I've not grown any of this myself. This is all stuff that's commercially available. I'm not a farmer. I don't own a farm. I live in a terrace house, so I don't have that much of a garden. So first of all, we're going to start off with some barley. And it's very simple to use. The millstone is simply turned using this handle. We can see the grain starting to go in down that hole in the top. I'm just going to add some more, but this time I am going to add some wheat. So there we go, pop some wheat in there as well. Get some wheat going in. Oops, a bit too much, never mind. Sort that out. Start grinding that in, soon make some space. And what's happening is that's starting to get crushed between these two stones. Now this isn't the most difficult of tasks. It's nothing like doing something like blacksmithing where you really need to pay attention to what you're doing in case you may injure yourself. And I've taken this to many of my school visits because that's my main job, and many children have turned grain into flour using this. Even 6-7-year-olds are easily able to use it, and I can well imagine in a lot of Anglo-Saxon families the small children kept busy for a few hours making flour for the family for the day. But not all families would have used their children. A lot of slaves were used in Anglo-Saxon society, and there is written accounts of grinding slaves. And a grinding slave was a slave, and true to the name, that would be used just for grinding grain down into flour. If you had a big estate if you were a lord, a shire reeve, if you had a lot of people in your household, then you would have one slave who was dedicated to making the flour to feed all of those people. So their job all day, every day, was to grind. So it's been about 5-ish minutes, and well, I've started, there we go, I've started to get some flour. Now, originally flour would have been sieved through linen. And that would have really depended, yet again, on your social status. And again, the poorest of people wouldn't have been able to afford the flour to have been sieved, and they would have ended up with lots of things like the bran, so the outer husk almost of any bits left in their bread, lots and lots of grit, lovely to wear down those teeth. And the richest of people would have been able to afford for their flour to be sieved many times, so it would have been very, very fine flour, perfect, nice and soft, lovely, and very similar to our more modern day bread, but still not like your white, soft, fluffy loaf that you have from the supermarket. But I'm just going to continue a bit more because, well, I've got the tiniest bit of flour, not enough definitely to feed me. See you in a minute. So by about the 8th or 9th centuries, larger communities would have had mills with much larger millstones than this, where their grain would have been ground down into flour by a professional miller. And some of these were being powered by water. By the time we get to the Doomsday Book being written, there's records of about 6,000 water-powered mills in England alone. So here's some flour. I have sieved it, although there is some lumps, as you can still tell, some grain still left in. But let's give it a go. Let's see what turns out. See if it's edible, or see if another sieving would be more appropriate. I'm just using my very un-Anglo Saxon bowl, I know. I'm just using some water, and I'm just mixing it together. I'm just going to try and make some good dough. I'm going to make unleavened bread today, which just means bread without yeast. And I think the best way to cook unleavened bread like this is on a pan over a fire. So the Anglo-Saxons would have done this on their hearth, on their open fire. Now, at the moment, we are in the middle of, I think it's Storm Eunice, so as much as I'd love to go outside, start a fire and actually cook it outside, there is, unfortunately, gale force winds, it's chucking it down, it's freezing, so I'm just going to cheat today. I'm going to use my gas stove inside, but I hope you enjoy this footage from last summer of me cooking over an open fire in my Anglo-Saxon kit. So all I've done is mix the flour with some water, and I've made the bread into a thin, almost biscuit shape really. It's about the same shape and size as a rich tea biscuit, and so I'm hoping that it shouldn't take too long to do. All I'm doing is I'm popping it into a modern frying pan. So off we go. In we go onto the gas fire. Now, as you can full well imagine, there's no written records, there's no set temperature or time on how long each side should take. So I'm going to give each side a couple of minutes and flip it over in between to see how long that might do. So bread can be cooked in a number of ways from specially made clay ovens. I did have a go at making one of these last summer. Unfortunately, I must have done something wrong, and I exploded in the garden whilst I fired it. and the more loaves of bread that you do see in some Anglo Saxon iconography, some images, then this is probably the more likely way that these were cooked. The sort of bread that I'm making today, the unleavened bread, the flattened bread, do believe is probably similar to the sort of cakes that very famously were burnt by the great Anglo Saxon King Alfred. In the Claude manuscript, when King Alfred famously burns those cakes, he cooks them, the loaves, in a pan over a fire, just as I am in this video here. So here's the finished article. It doesn't look the most appetising, I do admit. It doesn't look anything like what I normally eat, but I'm going to give it a go, and I can tell it's done because it sounds, I don't know if you can hear, it sounds hollow, it sounds like it's baked inside, so give it a go, see what it tastes like. Actually not unpleasant. It's quite nice. It tastes a lot fresher than our modern bread. And the lumps of grain that do still remain in there, they're not getting really in the way, so they're not bothering me too much. So it's quite pleasant actually. It's quite nice, and it is a very heavy bread, so I can understand perhaps where maybe Tolkien got his idea from lembas bread, perhaps with a bread like this, as I can perhaps imagine this being extremely filling. So yes, there we have it. Anglo Saxon bread made using a quernstone. I think it's the first and last time that I'm going to use my quernstone like that to make bread, as we know the effects and we understand the effects of how a quernstone like that would have on your teeth over time. But I have enjoyed making this bread, and I hope that you've learnt something, and I've learnt something as well today. I didn't realise it was going to actually taste this good, so I'm quite impressed with it, to be honest. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below, and if you really loved it, please consider subscribing. Thank you ever so much. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you, and goodbye.